You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hey y'all, spooky season is here. And if you're looking for a show to whet your appetite for a little haunted history, then I'd like to invite you to check out Southern Gothic, a chart-topping history podcast that explores some of the most infamous legends, folklore, ghost stories, and hauntings of the American South. We've covered all sorts of stuff from the Bell Witch of Tennessee to the disappearance of the Confederate submarine, the H.L. Hunley, not to mention our deep dives into the local lore of some of America's oldest and most haunted cities, like New Orleans, Charleston, and St. Augustine. So, if you're ready for a little good old-fashioned Halloween storytelling with a commitment to quality historical research, then be sure to check out Southern Gothic today. It's available now on all your favorite podcast apps.
Hey everyone, welcome to a short bonus episode of our Civil War podcast. My name is Rich.
And I'm Tracy. Hello y'all. Thanks for tuning into this special show, which is about the Thanksgiving holiday's ties to the Civil War.
Yeah, so tomorrow is the celebration of the Thanksgiving holiday here in the United States. And Tracy and I just wanted to do a short show to remind you guys of how it was Abraham Lincoln who established Thanksgiving Day as a formal and regular holiday here in the U.S. of A.
As most American school children learn, we can trace the first Thanksgiving celebrations here to the festivities that were held in 1619 in Virginia and in 1621 at Plymouth in Massachusetts. The Pilgrims celebrated at Plymouth for 3 days after their first harvest in 1621, and although the exact date is unknown, it was probably around September 29th.
Those celebrations in Virginia and at Plymouth were harvest feasts, and it was only later that the colonists began celebrating Thanksgiving with a small t, Thanksgiving days, which were more days set aside for prayer to give thanks to God for blessings like a military victory or the end of a drought or whatnot. Presidents George Washington and James Madison both issued Thanksgiving with a small t, Thanksgiving proclamations, but it was left to Abraham Lincoln in 1863 to establish Thanksgiving Day with a capital T as an official and recurring holiday.
Most people think that Lincoln was influenced by a woman named Sarah Josepha Hale, who had spent years campaigning for a national Thanksgiving holiday. After her husband died in 1822, Sarah was left to provide for their 5 children, and she eventually became a novelist and a poet. In 1827, she published a novel that included an entire chapter picturing a Thanksgiving meal celebrated by a farming family in New England. The main dish at the meal was a roasted turkey, and the menu also included several of the side dishes we've now come to associate with the traditional Thanksgiving feast.
In 1837, Sarah Hale became editor of an influential magazine whose target audience was women, and with her at its helm, subscriptions increased from 10,000 to 150,000 by 1860. In 1846, Sarah began to campaign for a national Thanksgiving holiday, and her position as editor of that popular ladies' journal was the perfect platform to spread the word of this new holiday that would be celebrated the last Thursday of November. And so she featured stories of family gatherings and recipes that promoted the New England style of celebrating an autumn or early winter harvest feast.
In the years before the Civil War began, Sarah wrote numerous letters to politicians advocating the adoption of a national Thanksgiving holiday, but the holiday wasn't adopted before the start of the war in 1861. The Civil War, however, only caused Sarah to increase her efforts.
It's interesting that both the Union and Confederacy proclaimed days of Thanksgiving, small t, days of Thanksgiving during the war. For example, after the Confederate victory at First Manassas, Jefferson Davis called for a day of Thanksgiving to be observed on Sunday, July 28, 1861. And Abraham Lincoln declared a day of Thanksgiving in April 1862 to honor the Union victories at Forts Henry and Donelson and at Shiloh. In 1863, Lincoln declared not one, but two separate Thanksgiving celebrations. The first was on Thursday, August 6th, following the victory at the Battle of Gettysburg. And then the second was Lincoln's official declaration of Thanksgiving as a national holiday to be observed on the last Thursday of every November. Lincoln's October 3, 1863 proclamation read, "I do therefore invite my fellow citizens in every part of the United States, and also those who are at sea and those who are sojourning in foreign lands, to set apart and observe the last Thursday of November next as a day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens."
In 1864, Lincoln again declared that the holiday would once again be observed on the last Thursday in November. Although there's no direct evidence that Sarah Hale's crusade for a national Thanksgiving holiday caused Abraham Lincoln to make his declarations, it's hard to believe her persistent efforts didn't play a role in his actions. Also, thanks to her efforts to promote a New England-style celebration, after the Civil War, the iconic Thanksgiving meal and the connection to the Pilgrims were cemented in the popular imagination. And this doesn't have anything to do with Thanksgiving, but Sarah Hale was also the author of the nursery rhyme, Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Okay, well, here's a bit of fascinating historical footnote that does have to do with Thanksgiving. Although every president since Lincoln has carried on the tradition of issuing proclamations setting aside Thanksgiving Day as a national holiday, there was quite a kerfuffle in 1939 when store owners pressured President Franklin D. Roosevelt to change Thanksgiving Day that year from the last Thursday of November to the fourth Thursday. You see, in 1939, the traditional Thanksgiving Day fell on the very last day of November, a fifth Thursday, and retailers, with America still struggling out of the Great Depression, well, retailers were worried that late date would mean low sales if Christmas shopping season was kicked off a week later than usual. So FDR agreed to move Thanksgiving up 1 week, thereby extending the holiday shopping season. And politics being politics, that decision led to a partisan battle, with 32 states celebrating FDR's Democratic Thanksgiving and 16 other states sticking with the traditional date and celebrating Republican Thanksgiving. It wasn't until 2 years later in 1941, after some wheeling and dealing in Congress, that Thanksgiving became a legal holiday on the fourth Thursday in November, and that's where it stayed ever since.
Did archaeologists discover Noah's Ark?
Is the rapture coming as soon as the Euphrates River dries up?
Does the Bible condemn abortion?
Don't you wish you had a trustworthy academic resource to help make sense of all of this?
Well, I'm Dan Beecher, and he's award-winning Bible scholar and TikTok sensation Dr. Dan McClellan, and we want to invite you to the Data Over Dogma podcast,
where our mission is to increase public access to the academic study of the Bible and religion, and also to combat the spread of misinformation about the same.
But, in a fun way.
Every week we tackle fascinating topics, we go back to source materials in their original languages,
and we interview top scholars in the field.
So whether you're a devout believer,
or you're just interested in a clear-eyed, deeply informed look at one of the most influential books of all time,
we think you're going to love the Data Over Dogma podcast,
wherever you subscribe to awesome shows.
What's something you learned in history class that you feel wasn't the whole truth? Better yet, what's something you didn't learn at all that was omitted completely? That's what I'd like to call redacted history. I believe that all history, no matter how good or bad, needs to be told. There are wars, massacres, battles, and entire historical events that are just not in our school's history books. Have you ever heard of Mary Bowser? I didn't think so. My name is Andre White, the host of the Redacted History Podcast, the place where history's forgotten events, heroes, and villains get their story told, one episode at a time. So come huddle around the campfire with me and get ready to hear the stories that you were robbed of. And get comfortable. We're going to be here a while. The Redacted History Podcast. Real history never dies. Stream the Redacted History Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts.
The presidential proclamation released just today by the White House for Thanksgiving Day 2014 begins by inviting us to reflect on the blessings we enjoy and the freedoms we cherish, and closes by encouraging, quote, the people of the United States to join together, whether in our homes, places of worship, community centers, or any place of fellowship for friends and neighbors, and give thanks for all we have received in the past year, express appreciation for those whose lives enrich our own, and share our bounty with others, end quote.
So in that spirit, Tracy and I want to take just a moment to share a few things we're thankful for. And I'll go first. I'm thankful for my family back in Pennsylvania, who I don't get to see nearly enough now that we've moved to Colorado. But I miss them, including my 87-year-old grandma, who still lives in her own home and who I know will be cooking tomorrow. And I know her house will smell wonderful, and I wish that I could be there.
And I'm thankful for Rich, who's sitting beside me and who we've been together for 15 years, so I'm thankful for that. Thankful for my family and our friends.
And I'm also thankful for Tracy, and that we did celebrate our 15th anniversary this year in April. And I know that's the longest I've ever been married to anyone.
Yeah, me too.
You too. What a coincidence. Okay.
And I'm thankful for our good health and that we get to live in a place with so many days of sunshine.
That is one nice thing about Colorado. And then I'm thankful, and I know Tracy is too, I'm thankful for the opportunity to do this podcast about the Civil War. Just within the last week or two, the podcast celebrated its second birthday. And in a lot of ways, it really doesn't seem like we've been doing this for 2 years. In a lot of ways, it seems like we just started the podcast yesterday. I mean, we love to tell this story and look forward to doing it for at least several more years. And one of the best things about doing the podcast that we're thankful for is just how we've been able to connect and engage with so many of you who listen to the podcast all around the world. And hearing from you and your support and encouragement is definitely one of the best things about doing the podcast. And so we're thankful for all of you. And we've said before that we really don't feel in doing this podcast about the Civil War that we're doing something special. We feel like we're a part of something special. And so much of that feeling has to do with you guys and the support and encouragement that you have given us over the past 2 years. And so we're thankful for the podcast, and we're thankful for all of you who listen to it.
That means it's time for this episode's book recommendation. But instead of recommending a book, we wanted to make y'all aware of the #GiveABook campaign that starts this Saturday, November 29th, and runs through December 24th.
So basically, the publishing giant Penguin Random House has said that for every time someone uses #GiveABook on Twitter or Facebook between those dates, they'll donate a book, up to 25,000 books, to U.S. children in need. And to do this, they've teamed up with the organization Save the Children. And we know that a lot of you guys use Facebook and Twitter since you contact us through both those places. So between this Saturday and Christmas Eve, all you have to do when you're on Facebook and Twitter to take part in this is use #GiveABook. Pretty cool.
So that's it for this show. We hope everyone here in the States has a safe and happy Thanksgiving tomorrow. We'll talk with y'all again on Sunday when we'll have episode number 99 for you.
And thanks, everyone. Bye.